Disowned by my parents was stripped from their will for not being their biological child. But a windfall from a distant relative turned the tables in a way they never expected. It all started with the simple truth I never thought I'd face. My parents disowned me. The reason? I wasn't their biological child. But what followed was even more unexpected. At the moment I thought I had lost everything, fate handed me a twist that would change everything. It wasn't just the heartache of being abandoned by the family I'd always known, but the sudden, sharp realization that my worth was never tied to blood. My life, once built on the fragile foundation of familial love, crumbled before me, leaving only confusion and anger. Yet through the ashes of betrayal, something incredible emerged. This story isn't just about family. It's about discovering who you truly are when everything familiar fades away. How did I go from being erased to inheriting a fortune from a distant relative? Let me take you back to where it all began. As I struggled to process the deep sting of rejection, I couldn't help but feel the weight of my family's betrayal settle like a heavy stone in my chest. For years, I had tried to fit in, to prove myself worthy of love in a house where I was always the outsider. When my mother remarried Tom, everything changed. His son Jake was already there, an older, seemingly perfect version of everything I wasn't. He had their attention, their affection, while I was left to battle the daily humiliations of being second best. Little things at first, like finding my shampoo mysteriously gone, or being blamed for messes that weren't mine, slowly chipped away at my sense of belonging. And then it escalated. Jake dropped out of college and moved back home, bringing chaos with him. Late-night parties, constant noise, a never-ending stream of strangers. But no matter how loud it got, no matter how much I tried to speak up, my mother and Tom always dismissed my concerns. They were too busy focusing on making their new family work. Meanwhile, I was pushed further into the background, squeezed into a guest room when Nathan, my new half-brother, was born. The nursery was set up in my room, and suddenly I wasn't even a child of the family anymore. I was an afterthought. By the time I reached 18, the suffocating atmosphere was too much to bear. I had worked part-time jobs and saved enough to move out, but the fear of the inevitable confrontation held me back. My mother would try to guilt-trip me, accusing me of abandoning my family. Tom, cold and unbothered, saw me as nothing more than a nuisance. Still, I knew it was my only escape, my chance at freedom. And so, one evening, I did what I had to do. I walked away, with a heart full of pain but a mind clear of the toxic ties that had bound me. The family that had always made me feel invisible could no longer control me. Little did I know, that decision would set off a chain of events that would unravel everything I had ever known about love, loyalty, and family.
The decision to leave was not one I took lightly. In fact, it felt like the culmination of years of silent suffering, a quiet rebellion against a family that had made it clear, through their actions, that I was never enough. That night, after telling Tom and my mother I was moving out, I could feel the weight of their disappointment pressing down on me like a suffocating cloud. Tom's mocking tone, the disbelief in his eyes, it was as if I had shattered some unspoken rule. He dismissed me, his words cold and sharp, accusing me of being selfish, of abandoning my half-brother Nathan, who, in his eyes, was the real family. My mother, always the peacemaker, simply sighed, muttering something about family sticking together. It hurt more than I expected, hearing her say that when I had felt like an outsider for so long. I packed my things the next day, the silence between us louder than any argument. But even then, there was no comfort, no reassurance, just the overwhelming weight of knowing I would never truly belong in this house. I had always been the one to compromise, to make peace with being invisible, but this time I wasn't backing down. As I stepped into my new apartment, the overwhelming sense of freedom came crashing over me. It was a strange mix of relief and loneliness, knowing I had taken control of my life, yet realizing that the life I had known was gone forever. But what I didn't expect was how quickly the cracks in the family would begin to show. My mother's calls grew more frequent, her guilt-laden words trying to pull me back into the fold. But what they didn't know was that I was no longer desperate for their approval. They had already shown me, time and time again, that I didn't matter. Now I was determined to build a life where I mattered. It was only then that I realized I wasn't just leaving my home, I was leaving the very people who had never truly seen me.
It wasn't long before the phone call started. The first came just days after I moved out, my mother's voice trembling on the other end. She tried to sound casual, but I could hear the desperation beneath her words, a quiet panic creeping through her attempts at normalcy. "Tom's been thinking about his will," she said, as though discussing the weather. "He wants to make sure everything's in order." I could feel my heart drop into my stomach. For years, I had endured the feeling of being the outsider, the one who didn't belong. But hearing her casually mention the will, cut deeper than I ever imagined. I braced myself, preparing for the inevitable. "He's decided to include Jake and Nathan," she continued, her tone almost apologetic. "But not you, because you're not his biological child. He believes it's more rational." My breath caught in my throat as her words echoed in my head. Rational? As if I had never been more than an inconvenience, a mistake, someone who didn't deserve any of the family's legacy. It wasn't the money that stung, it was the cold, calculated exclusion. After everything, after all the years of trying to prove myself, all the sacrifices, I was nothing more than a stranger to them. I forced myself to respond, keeping my voice even, trying to mask the raw ache spreading through me. "I understand," I said, though every part of me wanted to scream. She rushed to soften the blow, her voice growing frantic. "This is just legal stuff. It doesn't change how we feel about you. We still love you. You know that, right?" Her words felt hollow, empty. The truth was clear. This wasn't about love. It was about blood, about ownership, about a family that had never truly accepted me. That night, I sat in the silence of my new apartment, the weight of their betrayal suffocating me. I had been cast aside, not just emotionally, but legally. I had always known they didn't see me as one of them. But this was the final confirmation. The sting was unbearable, yet in that moment, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just a victim of their rejection, I was a survivor, and now I had the power to reclaim my life. And as painful as it was, I wasn't going to let them hold me down any longer. The days following that crushing phone call felt like a blur. I couldn't shake the coldness of Tom's words, the finality in my mother's voice. It wasn't just the exclusion from the will. It was the way they had stripped me of any sense of belonging. I had spent so many years trying to fit into their world, but now it was clear. I was never meant to be a part of it. The anger burned inside me, a slow and steady rage that had been building for years. I had always tried to prove myself worthy, but no matter how much I gave, how much I sacrificed, I was always treated as an outsider. I found myself pacing around my apartment, the emptiness echoing in the space. The silence was deafening, but I didn't feel truly alone, not anymore. For the first time in my life, I was free from the constant judgment, the silent accusations, the feeling of being invisible in a house that was never truly mine. I thought I would feel relief,
But what I didn't expect was the weight of grief that followed. It wasn't just about the family I had lost. It was about the person I had tried so desperately to be. The one who always tried to please, always hoped for love and acceptance that would never come. Then came the letter. Aunt Margaret's inheritance wasn't just a financial gift. It was a lifeline, a chance to rebuild everything. I couldn't believe it when I read the words. She had left everything to me. My first instinct was disbelief. How could she, a distant relative I hardly knew, see something in me that my own family never did? I felt a mix of shock and guilt, like I was taking something that didn't belong to me. But as I read the letter, her words became clear. She saw something in me that I had long forgotten to see in myself. She saw strength, independence, and the potential to build a future on my own terms. It was like a switch flipped inside me. I wasn't going to let the rejection from my family define me anymore. I wasn't their problem to fix. I had a life to live, and for the first time, I was going to do it for myself. I wasn't going to let their cruelty, their coldness, or their judgments hold me back. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was the key to my freedom, and I was ready to step through that door.
It felt like the calm after the storm, though I knew it was only temporary. The inheritance from Aunt Margaret had given me the space I desperately needed, and with it came a sense of freedom I had never known before. I was no longer a pawn in my family's twisted game, no longer bound by their expectations, their manipulations, and their constant disregard for me. I had control now, and it felt like an overwhelming, exhilarating wave of power. But, as expected, the ripple effect of my decision to step away from them didn't stop there. The family began to stir, slowly but surely. At first, it was subtle. A few calls from my mother, tentative, as if testing the waters. But I wasn't fooled. The guilt they had tried to wield over me so many times before was still there, just beneath the surface, waiting to resurface. I didn't answer the calls, and I didn't want to. For the first time, I wasn't running after their approval. But when the next bombshell hit, I was far from prepared. It came through a message from my mother, casual at first, as if nothing had changed. "You know, Tom has been thinking about the will," she said, her words careful, like she was walking on eggshells. But I knew exactly where this was headed. The air in my lungs seemed to freeze, and a cold knot of dread settled in my stomach. She then went on without much emotion. "He's decided to include Jake and Nathan, but not you." The sting was immediate. It wasn't the money that stung, but the finality of it all, the realization that, even in death, Tom's decision was clear. I was still the outsider. It wasn't even about the inheritance at that point. It was about how easily they erased me, how casually they reaffirmed what I had known all along, that I was never truly part of their world. The guilt, the shame, the feeling of being discarded, they hit me harder than I anticipated. But as I stared at my phone, the words ringing in my mind, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was simply done. Done with the lies, done with the manipulation. For the first time, I understood the power of walking away, not just from them, but from the self-doubt they had implanted in me over the years. They had no hold on me anymore. The inheritance was my escape, but more than that, it was my affirmation that I didn't need their approval to succeed. I had already won by choosing myself, and that, in the end, was worth more than anything they could ever offer. Despite the feeling of victory that came with my new independence, I couldn't shake the sting of rejection that lingered some after my family's betrayal. The inheritance from Aunt Margaret was more than just a financial windfall. It was a lifeline, a bridge to freedom, but it couldn't erase the scars left by years of emotional neglect. As I adjusted to my new life, The weight of being excluded from the family's world continued to haunt me. I had thought that walking away would sever all ties, but as the weeks went by, I realized that my family wasn't done with me yet. The first sign came when I received a call from my mother. Again, more subtle this time, as though testing my resolve. She claimed they were thinking of me and hoping I was well, but I knew this was more than just small talk. Beneath her concern, there was an undeniable undertone of guilt, like they knew what they had done to me but couldn't admit it. The call ended abruptly, but I could tell that she was fishing for a response. And then came the real shock. A few days later, I got a call from Jake, the stepbrother who had made my life hell for years. His voice was strangely calm, too calm, as if he were carefully orchestrating something. "Hey," he started, almost casual, "Mom told me about your situation." He went on to say how things weren't the same without me, and how maybe it was time to let bygones be bygones. It hit me like a punch to the gut. Jake, the very person who had treated me like an afterthought, suddenly wanted to fix things? It was beyond infuriating. The audacity of it all. They thought I would just come crawling back. They thought I would bend, that I would forget how they had treated me simply because of some distant inheritance. But what they didn't understand was that it wasn't the money I needed, it was respect, something they had never given me. They could keep their hollow apologies and empty gestures. I wasn't going to be their backup plan anymore. For the first time in my life, I felt a deep sense of clarity. I wasn't going back, not for them, not for their false promises. The family I had always longed for was never going to come from them. It was time to build my own. I had everything I needed now: independence, peace, and the sense of self-worth I had never known before. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving, and I had no intention of going back to the life I had left behind.
As the days turned into weeks, I tried to focus on the new life I was building. The apartment was quiet, peaceful, my sanctuary from the chaos I had left behind. Yet, the echoes of the past refused to fade completely. My mother's occasional calls and Jake's insincere attempts to reconnect made me feel like I was still tethered to the family I had worked so hard to escape. But the truth was clear. I was no longer the person I once was. I had changed. The power I had gained from walking away, from taking control of my life, couldn't be undone. But even in the stillness of my new life, I knew this wasn't over. I hadn't fully accepted that the family I had yearned for wasn't coming back. They would never acknowledge the pain they had caused or the ways they had failed me. Still, it felt strange, almost wrong, to completely sever ties. A part of me, no matter how hard I tried to bury it, still longed for their approval, for a sign that they saw me as something more than an outsider. Then came the day I received a call from my mother that would change everything. It wasn't a call of concern or guilt this time. It was business as usual. "We're having a family dinner to celebrate Tom's recovery," she said, her voice laced with urgency. "You should come. It's time to put the past behind us." I could feel the weight of her words pressing down on me. The invitation wasn't a gesture of reconciliation, it was a demand. They needed me there to restore the image of a happy, whole family. But I wasn't going to be their pawn anymore. I had moved on. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to please them or make them proud. I wasn't going to play the role they had written for me. I politely declined. The family dinner, the reunion they were hoping for, would have to happen without me. Because I had already found the family I needed, the one that valued me for who I truly was. The decision to turn down my mother's invitation felt heavier than I expected, like closing a door on a part of me that still longed for approval. But as the days passed, I felt the weight lifting. I no longer needed to prove myself to them, and that was a freedom I hadn't known I craved. What I hadn't anticipated was how their desperation would escalate. Just when I thought the storm had passed, my mother reached out again.
this time with news that rattled me to my core. "Tom's been thinking," she started, her voice strangely neutral. "He wants to finalize everything with the will. We need to talk about it." A chill ran through me. My pulse quickened as I braced myself for whatever was coming next. "He's decided," she continued, almost casually, "that he wants to leave Jake and Nathan everything, but not you. He says it's more rational, given everything." I sat there in stunned silence, the words echoing in my mind. Rational? Hadn't I given everything for this family? Hadn't I tried so damn hard to earn their love, their respect? And now I was being erased once again, reduced to nothing more than a distant memory. The hurt was sharp, but beneath it, a simmering rage began to bubble up. "I understand," I replied, the words cold and distant, though every part of me wanted to scream, to demand an explanation. But there was no point. I had spent years hoping they'd see me, hoping they'd realize my worth. Now I knew better. That night, I felt the familiar ache of betrayal, but this time it was different. I wasn't devastated. I wasn't shattered. I was simply done. Done with their manipulation, done with their control. Their rejection only solidified what I had known all along. I had to walk away to survive. It was them that I realized. The finality of their actions had set me free. The inheritance wasn't just a financial gift. It was the ultimate rejection of everything they had done to me. And for the first time, I understood that I didn't need their approval or their money to define who I was. I was enough on my own. As the days passed, I found myself standing on a crossroads, staring into the abyss of what remained of my fractured family. The sting of Tom's final decision to exclude me from his will had burned deep, but it had also sparked something inside me, a sense of clarity I hadn't realized I was missing. For so long, I had sought their approval, tried to convince myself that if I just proved myself enough, they would finally accept me. But now the truth was undeniable. I would never be enough for them, and that realization, though painful, was liberating. What shocked me most was how easily they dismissed me. Tom, the man I had once tried so hard to win over, had made his decision without hesitation, as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience in his perfect family. My mother, ever the peacemaker, tried to smooth things over, but her words felt empty, hollow. She spoke of family, of sticking together, but those words had lost all meaning when they chose to abandon me. I spent the following days in a state of numb disbelief. I had given so much of myself, invested years of my life in a family that never saw me. And now, with their rejection etched into my very soul, I realized I had nothing left to prove. I didn't need their acceptance to be whole. And that was when the true power of my decision hit me. I had left behind not just a family, but a lifetime of toxic patterns. I no longer had to chase after the love of people who would never see me as I truly was. I was free. Free to live for myself, to build a future on my own terms. For the first time in my life, I was no longer bound by their judgments. I was my own person, and that was all I needed. As I sat in the silence of my small, newly acquired apartment, something unexpected happened. The pain of rejection, the sting of being erased from the family I had longed to belong to, was starting to dull. But it wasn't gone. It simmered beneath the surface like a dark cloud that lingered even as I tried to build my new life. And then, as if to remind me of the world I had just walked away from, I received the call that would shift everything. It was a lawyer's voice on the other end of the line, calm, professional, but carrying the weight of something heavy. "Am I speaking with my name?" he asked. "I'm calling about Margaret Evans, your great aunt. She passed away recently, and she left everything to you." The world seemed to pause. My great aunt? I barely remembered her. She was a distant relative, someone I had seen only in fleeting moments as a child. She had always been kind to me, but we hadn't kept in touch. Yet here I was, suddenly the sole beneficiary of an estate worth millions, a fortune I had never expected, never even imagined could be mine. The news hit me like a shockwave, and for a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It felt like fate was throwing me a lifeline, but it also felt like an unspoken challenge. The lawyer went on to explain the details, the properties, the trust funds, the investments, but I could barely hear him over the ringing in my ears. My mind raced. Why me? Why had she left everything to someone she barely knew, someone who had never been part of her daily life? And then it clicked. Aunt Margaret hadn't seen me as an outsider. She saw something in me that I had long forgotten to see in myself. Strength, independence, a spark that was worth nurturing. Her inheritance wasn't just money, it was a chance to rewrite my story. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. It was as if the universe had conspired to show me that even in the face of rejection, I could rise. And so I did. I took that inheritance not just as a gift, but as a rebirth. I had a future to build, one that would be entirely my own. The inheritance from Aunt Margaret had not only changed my financial situation, it had completely transformed my sense of self. As the days passed, I realized that what had once seemed like a cruel twist of fate had actually been a blessing. Her gift wasn't just a sum of money. It was an undeniable sign that I had a future of my own, one free from the shadows of my past. For the first time, I saw the possibility of a life where I wasn't defined by family rejection, but by my own strength and choices. However, that clarity came with its own challenges. The phone calls from my mother and Tom became more insistent. They weren't concerned about my well-being, they were concerned about the inheritance. The guilt tripping started again, with my mother trying to paint me as the villain for not sharing my good fortune with them. But something inside me had shifted. I could feel the weight of their manipulation like a burden I was finally free of. I didn't need their approval. As I stood on the precipice of this new life, I realized I was no longer chasing after love or acceptance. I had found both within myself. This inheritance wasn't just a financial gift. It was the final push I needed to walk away completely, to build a future that was truly mine. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me.